Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Nismah. I'm a 5th semester student of English Department Warman University. And today I'm here to talk about short story. So basically, I made this video to fulfill my literature in language teaching assignment. So first, I will explain about the material, and after that, I will give you some activities to do. So without further ado, let's get down to the point. Maybe I will share the screen first. Okay. All right. So, short story. So this is the material that we will learn today. So first, I will explain about the activity. So first, number 1, student will learn to recognize elements from the short stories. And second, student will read aloud the short story with the teacher. And the third, student will identify the elements of the short story that will be given. And 4, students are asked to find short story and identify them in the brainstorming template. And the 5, last but not least, student will make a short story from a template. Next, what is a short story? Do you guys know what is a short story? Well, if you don't know, I will explain it to you. So this is the definition of short story. So a short story is a brief work of fiction where usually the main character faces a conflict that is worked out in the plot of the story. Well, an average short story usually has at least 3,500 words and no more than 7,500. Traditionally, short stories were meant to be read in a single sitting. So they are usually published individually in magazines and then collected and published in anthologies. Well, so as I know, a short story is one of the most common forms of writing. It is often used to describe a single event, a single episode, or a tale of one particular character. A short story doesn't usually involve a major twist and conflicts, and involvement of various subplots and multiple characters is not common. A short story is basically fictional prose and written in a narrative style. However, the narrative style may either be first person or third, or whichever the author chooses. And next. Well, what is the history of the short story? So, short story can be traced. Short story from short storytelling can be traced back to ancient legends, mythology, folklore, and fables found in communities all over the world. Some of the story existed in written form, but many were passed down through oral tradition. By the 14th century, the most well-known stories included 1001 Night, Middle Eastern folk tales by multiple authors, later known as Arabian Nights, and Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. It wasn't until the early 19th century that short story collections by individual authors appeared more regularly in print. So, first, it was the publication of the Brother Grimm fairy tales, then Edgar Allan Poe Gothic fiction, and eventually story by Anton Chekhov, who is often credited as the founder of the modern short story. The popularity of short story grew along with the surge of print magazines and journals. Newspaper and magazine editors began publishing stories as entertainment, creating a demand for short, plot-driven narratives with mass appeal. By the early 1990s, the Atlantic Monthly, The New Yorker, and Harper's Magazine were paying good money for short stories that show more literary technique. That golden era of publishing gave rise to the short story as we know it today. And next is, what are the different types of short story? Well, short story come in all kinds of categories like action, adventure, biography, comedy, crime, detective, drama, fable, fantasy, etc. But we will discuss about fable, fast fiction, mini saga, fiction, modernism, postmodernism, and magical realism. And last but not least, minimalism. Well, first, I will explain about fable. So, fable is a tale that provides a moral lesson, often using animals, mythical creatures, force of nature, or inanimate objects come to life. While flash fiction. So flash fiction is a story between 5 to 2,000 words that lacks traditional plot structure or character development, and is often characterized by a surprise or twist of fate. And mini saga. Mini saga is a type of microfiction using exactly 15 words to tell a story. And the third is finite. The fourth is finite. A finite is a descriptive scene or defining moment that doesn't contain a complete thought or narrative but reveals an important detail about a character or idea. And next is modernism. So modernism is experimenting with narrative form, style, and chronology such as inner monologues and stream of consciousness to capture the experience of an individual. And next is postmodernism. So this is using fragmentation paradox or unreliable narrators to explore the relationship between the author, reader, and text. And magical realism. So this is combining realistic narrative or setting with elements of surrealism, dream, or fantasy. And last but not least is minimalism. So minimalism is writing characterized by brevity, straightforward language, and a lack of plot resolution. Well, I think that's all for the different type of short story. We will go to the next material. So yeah, we hear the social function. Sorry. So this is the social function. First is to entertain the reader. Well, when an author's purpose is to entertain the reader, they will struggle to keep things as interesting as possible. Things happen in books that are written to entertain, whether in the form of an action-packed plot, investigative characterization, or sharp dialogue. And second is to teach a moral lesson. So moral is defined as a principle that governs right and wrong, or the lesson of a short story. Short stories have a way of teaching lessons that makes them more relatable and interesting. The moral of a story is the reason that story teaches about how to behave in the world. The moral of a story is supposed to teach you how to be a better person. So if a moral is used as an adjective, it means good or ethical. So number 5 is to provide unique literary experience. It's one of the main functional because if you like to read or usually read short story, that will make your creativity increase to write something. So it's like when we will learn some language, we have to know more about the vocabulary, right? And to get more vocabulary, we have to read more. So that's the same when we will make the short story, we also need the experience of literary. With this experience reading short story, we will be able to make precise assumption, give regret judgment, and leave conclusion. And number 4 is to understand human experience. The human experience is the term for the realities of human existence, including the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical characteristics of human life. We will move to the next material. The next is generic structure. Well, for this generic structure, first is orientation. It is about the opening paragraph where the characters of the story are introduced. The orientation sets the scene, mood, and introduces the characters. Try to include when, where, who, and what in the section to explain to the reader what the story is going to be about. And next, rising action. So rising action is the event when the problem leading up. The rising action of a story is the section of the plot leading up to the climax, in which the tension stemming from the story's central conflict grow to successive plot developments. Rising action, and next the third rising action. So the rising action starts right after the period of exposition and ends at the climax. Beginning with the inciting incident, rising action is the bulk of the plot. It is composed of a series of events that build on the conflict and increase the tension, sending the story racing to a dramatic climax. And next is climax. So the climax is the event when the problem reaches a high point. In literary terms, the definition of climax is the highest point of tension in a storyline, often devastated by a confrontation between the protagonist and antagonist. A climax resolves the main conflict of the story and is the moment the main character reaches or fails to reach their goal. And last is falling action. Falling action is the event when the character solves the problem. The falling action of a story is the section of the plot following the climax in which the tension stemming from the story's central conflict increases and the story moves toward its conclusion. Falling action is just one part of the structure of a story's overall plot. The falling action follows the climax, or the moment of peak tension in the story. The opposite of falling action is rising action, as I told you earlier, which occurs before the climax and in which the story main conflict unfolds, the tension builds. And the last is resolution. So resolution is this how the story ends up. The resolution, also known as the denouement, so is the conclusion of the story's plot. It's where any unanswered questions are answered or loose ends are tied. Interestingly, the phrase denouement comes from the French word denouement, meaning to untie. The story with a complete ending is said to have a strong resolution. So the resolution is the last of the 5 main elements of plot. The resolution allows us the story to end without trailing off or leaving the reader confused or unsatisfied. And next is the elements. Well, first is character. So character is the group of feature traits and characteristics that form the individual nature of some person or thing. The character is a person, animal, being, creature, or thing in a story. Writers use characters to perform the action and speak dialogue, moving the story along a plot line. A story can have only one character, such as protagonist, and still be a complete story. This character's conflict may be an inner one within himself or herself, or a conflict with something natural, such as climbing a mountain. Most stories have multiple characters interacting with one of them as the antagonist. So the antagonist, as you know, causing a conflict for the protagonist. Speaking about characters, there are 2 types of characters. First is major characters. These are the most important characters in the story because there are 2 types, of which were maybe a couple for each. First is protagonist. This is the main character around which the whole story revolves. The decision made by this character will be affected by a conflict formed within or externally through another character, nature, technology, society, or the past star. And the second, as you know, is antagonist. This character or group of characters cause the conflict for the protagonist. However, the antagonist could be the protagonist who is torn by a problem within. Most times, something external is causing the problem. The group of people causing the conflict would be considered society, perhaps a member of a team, community, or institution. And second is minor characters. These are the other characters in a story. They are not as important as the major characters, but still play a large part in the story. Their action help drive the story forward. They may impact the decision that protagonist or antagonist make, either helping or interfering with the conflict. And next is setting. Setting is a description of where and when the story takes place. The setting of a story is the location where a story takes place. This setting can be anywhere. It could be your home, school, or a magical kingdom far away. Every story has a setting. For example, in the Little Red Riding Hood story is set in a village near a forest. For example, there is a house inside the forest where Red Riding Hood's grandmother lives. So that's a setting of a short story. Usually there are 3 different kinds of story settings, such as temporal, environmental, and individual. So temporal settings are the era in which a story takes place. For example, the novel Pride and Prejudice is set in the Regency era. The Great Gatsby is set in the Roaring Twenties, and the Lord of the Rings books are set towards the end of an imaginary period of the Earth's history called the Third Age. And environmental settings are the geographical location of story. And last, individual settings are the specific personal location within stories. The settings are often fictional, even if the temporal and environmental settings are real. For example, the individual settings within Pride and Prejudice would be Conway, Netherfield, Rosing Park, and Longbourn. In The Great Gatsby, this would be Gatsby's house, Nick's house, and the house of the Daisy and Tom. In The Lord of the Rings, the individual settings would be Bag and Edoras and Aaron's house in Rivendell. And next is plot. So, plot, as you know, is the main sequence of events that make up the story. So, a plot is the sequence of events that make up a story, whether it's told, written, film, or sung. The plot is the story, and more specifically, how the story develops, unfolds, and moves in time. Plots are typically made up of five main elements, as I told you earlier, such as orientation, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. And next, there is conflict. So conflict or tension is usually the heart of the short story and is related to the main character. Conflict is a clash between two opposing forces that create the narrative trait for a story. Conflict occurs when the main characters struggle with either an external conflict or an internal conflict. There are 6 different types of conflict you can use to profile your story. First is character versus herself, and second is character versus character, and character versus society, and character versus supernatural, and last, character versus technology. Next is point of view. So point of view is the story from which the story told. The point of view of a story is the perspective from which a story is told. Readers may choose to tell their story from one of 3 perspectives, such as first person, chiefly using I or we, while third person, chiefly using he, she, or it, which can be limited single character knowledge or omniscient all-knowing. And a second person, chiefly using you and your. And next is theme. This is the last, I guess. The last is theme. Last is theme. Well, theme is a controlling idea. The authors thought about a topic or view of human nature. The theme of a story is what the author is trying to convey. In other words, the central idea of the story. Short stories often have only one theme, whereas novels usually have many themes. The themes of a story is treated throughout the story, and the action, interaction, and motivation of the character all reflect the themes of the story. But don't confuse theme with story plot or morals. Plot is what happened in the story and the sequence of events in the story. And morals are the lessons the authors want the main character to learn from the story. Each lesson of theme, the whole story, that is the events of the story, illustrate the theme, and the lesson you learn related directly to the theme. And next, is language features. Well, language features, there are past tense. Usually, they use past tense such as killed, drunk, etc. That's the example. and there are adverb of time and time conjunction and specific character, action verb, and direct speech. So I think that's all for the material. We will move to the activities. So I will give you the link for this map. You should find a short story and then you will do this on this map. So you will read the character and then you will write the character problem and outer. And the second activity, you will write a short story. So this is the template. I will give you the link too. But first, I will show my summary for short story that I use. The short story that I use is called. The screen first. Yeah. So this is the short story that we will use. I will read only one paragraph, but I think this is a little bit difficult to understand for you guys, so I have provided what I have identified. I will show you. So this is the one that I have identified. I will read the summary first and we can go to the plot and characterization. So the summary. The necklace tells the story of Madame Mathilde Loisel and her husband. Mathilde always imagined herself in a high social position with wonderful jewels. However, she has nothing and marries a low-paid clerk who tries his best to make her happy. Through lots of begging at work, he is able to get 2 invitations to the Ministry of the Public Instruction Party. Mathilde then refuses to go, for she has nothing to wear. Her husband is upset to see her displeasure and using money that he was saving to buy a rifle. So a rifle is a gun. Since they have no money left, her husband suggests that she borrows something from her friend, Madame Jean. Mathilde picks out the fanciest jewel necklace that she can find. After attending the Ministry of Public Instruction party, Mathilde discovers that she has lost the necklace. Mathilde and her husband look everywhere, but the necklace is not to be found. They take up loans from generous friend and loan shark to buy a necklace that looks just like the one that was lost. It takes them 10 years of hard labor to buy the new jewel. After losing everything, they have to work and forcing her husband to work 2 jobs. And it turns out that Madame Forrester is surprised and tells the Mathilde that the original necklace was actually fake. So that's a little bit plot twist. And this is the plot. The first conflict is Mathilde wants a perfect dress for the ball, Loisel wants a gun, and they only have and this is the rising action, and this is the second conflict, and this is the rising action, this is still a rising action, and this is the climax, and this is the resolution. And for the characterization, there are 3 characters. First is Madame Loisel as a as a wife, and Monsieur Loisel as a husband, and Madame Forrester as a friend. And for characterization, I make this. So Madame Loisel is selfish, beautiful, charming, middle class, spoiled, blah blah blah. And Monsieur Loisel, kind, generous, loyal, hardworking, etc. And Madame Forrester, kind, generous, wealthy, and snobby. And for the theme is people should be happy with what they have. And this is the setting. This is the setting of time, and this is the setting of place. And for the point of view, the short story is told from the third-person limited point of view. The author focuses on Madame Loisel's thoughts and feelings, so that's why the point of view is used third person. Yeah. Next. I think that's all for today. I'm sorry if there's a mistake while presenting this video. I hope you can learn something from my video, and don't forget to do the assignment that I have given to you guys. I will put the link for download the mind map template. So I think that's all. Thank you for watching my video, and see you in another video.